All right, here I am with Tony Reda. Tony, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Jay.
Okay, I'm looking forward to chatting with you, and we're going to go a few different directions. A lot of my conference audience will be familiar with you because you've been in the game a long time, and a key player with Kaminak Gold Corp. You guys raised about 165 million back in the day, found 5 million ounces of gold, sold
Yeah.
that project for over $500 million to Gold Corp. I imagine you learned a ton. That's what you're carrying forward at the Tectonic today. So I want to jump into that story a little bit and key lessons and takeaways. But before we do that, if we could step back and I want to hit you actually with the EB Tucker question, Tony. Why gold? Why now? What are you seeing in the market?
Oh, great. Why gold? Why now? Well, I guess my preface or my disclaimer statement is that just because I'm a CEO of a junior mining company doesn't mean I'm an expert in gold, gold finding perhaps, but not in sort of the prospects of gold and where I think the gold price is going. So with that being said, obviously I'm a believer in gold. I think the world or the sort of the situation right now in the world is quite dire in many ways. And yes, there's some awesome things happening in the world right now. We can't overlook that and just focus on the negative. But we're seeing right now with the current wars, and that's plural, we're seeing some price movement in gold. So what that just solidifies is that gold is a safe haven. Now, I don't view gold as necessarily a primary investment tool. It does that as a default, but it actually is a storage of wealth. And if you lay out all the currencies on a table right now or on a desk, including the digital currency, Bitcoin, and then you put physical gold, and I think if you eradicate the price points and just say, okay, which one do you want to have as a storage of wealth? I honestly believe that most people, regardless of age, will default to gold. It is understood, it has value, and that will not change. And when you look at the other currencies, say the US dollar, for example, it's paper. And as there's a fictitious value prescribed to it. And that I say fictitious intentionally. So for me, I think gold will continue to be the safe haven. It will continue to be a very well-known, understood, secure place to park your capital. And pardon my language, when shit hits the fan, I want gold. And I've instilled that in my children. And I think that's the direction that we're going to continue to go. There may be some ups and downs, but ultimately gold is not going nowhere. And if you think of what's happening again in the world right now, the central banks, which is a great indicator, what currency do they want? I always say there's two types of sort of investments, the trade investment and the investor that's actually investing. And I think central banks, they're not the traders. There's people that trade with currencies, that sort of thing. But ultimately, the central banks are buying gold. And that tells you something.
Yeah, and in huge volumes too, and not just buying it. You're right; they're repatriating a lot of that gold, so taking physical possession. One of my common guests, a frequent guest in the show, is Luke Groman, who my audience just loves. And Luke's got a great quote on gold. He says, "There's very few times in history where you actually need to own gold, but during those moments, it's about the only thing you want to own." Which
Yeah.
speaks to your point about if you were to lay, Bitcoin, US dollars, maybe Australian dollars, gold bars, whatever other currency alternatives you might want to put on the table, what are people going to go for?
Yeah.
People understand gold, and a lot of the flock to Bitcoin, I think, is it's yes, there's an attraction to the utility of a digital currency, but there's also an understanding that the value of fiat is not what it used to be, and people have wrapped their minds around that. So they're looking for a lifeboat. They're looking for an alternative. Okay, now walking back to Kaminak, I'd love to hear from you, Tony, what you learned along that journey. You guys raised a ton of dough, found a phenomenal deposit, sold that deposit successfully. You're carrying those lessons into your company today. What did you learn and what's applicable today in today's markets?
Well, that's another great question, and what I'm trying to unpack. There's layers to that. What did I learn? Oh, wow. I learned that the highs are sometimes few and far between. And it's kind of like the junior mining space can be like an addiction, if where you're basically, constantly chasing that high, and that high is like those wins and whatnot. So the takeaway is that it's a long-term game. You have to play the long game, and you catch these blips, and some people catch it and it's a short-term win, say a year, 2 years, but really, if you want to play the long-term game, you have to have the patience, the endurance, and the perseverance. These markets, junior mining markets are insanely volatile, and insanely cyclical, hands down. So the volatility, use it as your friend. It's not nice. It's not pleasant to deal with right now. For instance, even I've been saying lately, like even when you're winning, it feels like you're losing right now. We just raised 8 million in Tectonic Metals Inc. And man, like although our share price is in the green post financing, which is quite rare given the current state, but you're not getting no love out there. But the volatility can be your friend, because that's when you can find new opportunities. Whether it's on the shareholder base or on the project side. So that's what one of the key things I learned about Kaminak, that play the long game, expect volatility, don't be surprised when it arrives, and then position yourself, as we were talking with, physical gold earlier on, but position yourself as a junior mining company executive to capitalize on those opportunities. And vis-a-vis the coffee project, which is the one we sold to Goldcorp for 565 million, if I'm not mistaken. We actually acquired that in 2009. So 2008, we all know what happened there. I'll tip my hat off to your conference, actually, Jay. You probably don't know this story, but there was 2 conferences that were in sync that year, and that was Roundup and Cambridge, now commonly referred to as VRIC. And we had 3.5 million in cash in 2008, which now people say might not be that much, but back then it was a serious amount of capital. Kaminak went from a $60 million market cap company pre 2008 all the way down to $6 million. In share price terms, that was from like 70 cents to 6 cents. We had 14 cents in cash, and we met with a prospector during that conference. That prospector had the Coffee Gold project. And what brought us to the table, he was trying to vend or sell this project, was, what other junior mining companies were offering him, say shares in their, which in many ways could be just a roll of toilet paper. You don't know what those shares are going to be worth. We actually had cash, and that allowed us to secure that property with a share cash deal. And more importantly to him, we walked in with a very robust year 1 program. We could offer that. And we didn't have to wait to raise capital. So that was a great example to, insulate yourself and be ready to pounce during those moments. And the other thing I'll share quickly, which is there's so much to share, but this one incident that comes to mind right now as well was in 2013, another crash in the market. Gold dropped $400 in one day. Ira Thomas and myself, Ira Thomas was the CEO, we're marketing and attending the European Gold Forum in Zurich. Gold dropped $400 a share. Our share price went from $1.25 over the next couple of months right down to 60, 80 cents. We produced a PEA. And then we had to insulate ourselves from potential hostile takeovers. We had a great asset, and we're like, someone might try to make a run for us. We decided to bring on 2 well-known resource billionaires, and that was Ross Beatty and Lucas Lundin. First time in tandem investing in one single junior mining company, $20 million deal. And it was phenomenal. And we're like, woohoo, we're great. Guess what happened? The share price went back down. You have 2 iconic mining people backing the story with significant ownership, and our share price went back down. It went up for a bit and went back down. So this tells you that also as an investor, you got to pause, and sometimes you're like, am I out to lunch here, or like what's happening? So the fortitude and the commitment to stand by your investment thesis, endure the pain, and lo and behold, there was a very short gain for Ross, Lucas, and then Tom Kaplan with Electrum. In I won't state what they made, but we're talking about like over 20 million, like this in a 2-year time frame. This was phenomenal for them, and very strategically on their part, very strategically, that when shit hits the fan and the markets are in the toilet like they are right now, what do? They started to invest, and lo and behold, they made was a pretty successful win for all parties.
I love that, man. I love where you went with that answer, Tony. And you know, you wrapped it up nicely, because right at the jump, you're like, here's what I learned. You got to play the long game. You have to expect volatility. You can't be surprised when it arrives. I mean, these are all things you said, and then kind of walked us through the story there. But that's key, isn't it, for retail investors, is to remember your time horizon. And if you can recall your time horizon, it gives you the durability to weather that short-term volatility, and sometimes, when necessary, the boldness to move in when everyone else is running away. As Ross Beatty, Lucas Lundin, Thomas Kaplan, they've made their fortunes by doing exactly that. Okay, let's jump into Tectonic Metals now. So you guys are up in Alaska, 2 projects up there. Walk my audience through what you're building now, Tony.
Yeah, so we crossed over into the Alaska side of things. Yes, the mineral tenure is phenomenal. Great infrastructure for a northern jurisdiction. There was a couple of movements why we went to that state. First thing, as now further evidenced, we need homegrown resources. Whether countries on the critical metal side or even on the gold side, there's a flight to safety, and everyone loves home. And although I'm not American, I consider Alaska, a Canadian relative, if you will. So we wanted to stay close to home. We understood North America. I mean, trying to permit something in Canada or in the States is one thing. Trying to permit in a far off country, third world, like that's a whole nother kettle of fish. And so Alaska ticked that box. It's you guys 7 producing mines, so that the mineral potential box was very was ticked. And then the other thing was our the opportunity to work directly with Native corporations. Native corporations in Alaska, there's a few of them. They're for profit. They've been around for depending on which one, but the one we've partnered up with has been around for 50 plus years. They're a $1 billion for-profit entity managing almost 30 million acres of land. And I looked at the pitfalls and trials and tribulations that a junior mining company faces advancing a project, or can face advancing a project into production. And I was like, wow, imagine if we got alignment on day one. And one of the mines in Alaska really inspired me. It's the Red Dog mine owned by Teck. The Native corporation is called Nana. It was that project. There was another project called Peak, which is now referred to as the Manh Choh mine, which is owned by Kinross and Contango. But I saw what they did, and I was like, wow, this is an opportunity where we can get alignment. If you're playing the long game with the local communities, with the Native corporations, and build something on ground floor, not on year 10. So Tectonic took this approach. We've actually been able to now attract the Native corporation as a large investor in our company. And we're currently drilling our flat gold project, which is, I can get into that, but that's our sort of core focus. And we're very excited about the opportunity there.
Okay, and I agree with you. I think investors are a lot more skittish when it comes to geopolitical risk. Alaska's a great spot to be. So 2 projects there, Flat and Tibbs. For prospective shareholders, Tony, where can we expect news flow to come out of? And talk to me about your work programs.
Yeah, so we're 100% focused this year on our flat gold project. This is the first drill program that we've executed on this property, and the first drill program in 20 plus years. There's 55 historical drill holes. They all hit gold. Funny enough, 25 out of the 55 ended in mineralization. So they shut the hole down while they're still in gold. And the drill holes, the distance from one to the other is probably about 2.5 kilometers. But the property itself is massive, and they've only drilled probably about a small percentage of it. The soil anomaly, probably 20% of the soil anomalies been drill tested. So we went in there this year with 2 drills, executed our first program, and we're just wrapping that up as we speak. And the major catalyst for our company, yes, there's some smaller ones, some new acquisitions, things of that nature, but the main catalyst will be drill results, which hopefully we'll get our first batch in December, just in time for Christmas. or otherwise it'll be Q1 of next year. So stay tuned for that.
Okay. And okay, so we'll look forward to drill results end of this year, early next. You know, a significant shareholder of yours who's familiar with my audience is Crescat Capital. We just had Tavi Costa on. Actually, I have Tavi on fairly regularly. He's a crowd favorite. So walk me through the relationship with Crescat.
Yeah, I think it started with our TIBS project, and you know, Crescat technical director is Quinton Henning, PhD in geology, and worked for the majors, and as let's call it the term street cred. He's got the eyes and ears of many investors, and also like funds, and also corporates as well. So we presented our TIBS project, which is near the Pogo mine, to him, and Quinton was actually involved in the sale of the Pogo mine, so he understands the geology, and that was great. So we solidified a relationship. But the Flat Gold project was presented to them probably about a year afterwards, and Crescat, as soon as they saw this project, they went from I think it was a 12% owner in our company to about 24% owner. They've doubled their ownership essentially in our company. So why did they do that? Well, Quinton was first on, Quinton, or Crescat, I should say. Crescat was first on Snowline. So they invested into Snowline in the initial rounds before they drilled their Rogue project. And what I always say is, like, when Crescat saw, so let me back it up. Snowline drilled this project, they released the visuals for one of the first few drill holes. Obviously, they didn't know where it was going to run, but they released it, and Quinton and Crescat were the lead order. I think it was a $20 million financing. So they backed it on the very beginning stage. Talk about like your investment thesis, patience, perseverance. Then they drilled this other project. They doubled down on that asset, and lo and behold, you know, I think Snowline now has a $600 million market cap. It's been a huge win for Crescat. So when I pitched this project, it's part of the same deposit family. It's called a reduced intrusion related gold system, same as Snowline. Same as the Fort Knox mine, and there's a few other deposits also that fit into this family. And so they doubled down, and then when it came time to drill and raise capital for that drill program, they doubled down again. And so they're all in on Tectonic. I think percentage wise, I believe we're their largest holding. And so they have the knack to identify these opportunities based on, you know, sound geological evidence and potential, and then they also back teams that they feel confident can execute, and thankfully we're one of them.
I love that. Well, congrats, you know, and so we'll look out for news flow, Tony, end of year. You'll probably have drill results right in time for my conference, middle of January, end of January. Yeah. So that's perfect. Yeah. I love that. But thanks for coming on today and getting in front of my audience, chatting with me, introducing the story. And I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.